Well, anything new with anybody else going on?
I've had a couple interesting things with apps on my iPhone where I've still got an iPhone 5,
Okay,
which means I can't update it to the new iOS.
right.
And some of these places are coming out with apps that they update them, and even though they claim they work, they don't. And then I've had to write to them, and then they fix it, and I get another update, and it works.
Well, that's good. At least you're getting that.
But I mean, I've had that happen now a couple times with a couple apps on my phone. So I guess they're really going to force you to update your phone.
There
Well,
he is.
it's the same with the Mac. No matter what, if you want some of the newer features, you got to have one that's I had bought my wife, oh gosh, about 3-4 years ago, a used Mac off of I think it was, oh shoot, um one of the used websites or whatever it was. And it worked great. All she really did was email and Safari. That was pretty much about it. But then of course, as a couple of versions of operating systems came by, and I couldn't upgrade that laptop anymore. And it was a 13-inch, and it was a little hard for her to see because she's faced the problem we're all
It's the
facing with
problem.
vision and everything else like that. And so here about 6-8 months ago, I was looking around on Mac of all trades, and they had a MacBook Pro that was like 1 year older than my MacBook Pro with like 4 gigs of RAM and a 500 gig hard drive, I think it had, or whatever. It wasn't a solid state drive, and it was like $699, and I bought that boy. And the nice thing is now we're using the same. We can use the same operating system on both of them, so I don't have to think about, oh, let's see, how did you do it on that operating system? I don't have to think about that, and I can use the Apple Remote Desktop software, which I've owned for years, and connect up to her Mac. Of course, you can connect up with about a dozen different ways, but as long as it's up and running, I can connect up whether she's logged on or not and see what she's doing or fix a problem without having to get my lazy butt up out of the chair and go over there and do it. So it's just I mean, my Mac is 4.5 years old, coming up on 5 here in just a few months. And quite honestly, I mean, if Robert gets on, I wanted to ask him some questions because he's got one of the newer Macs. Is it worth considering upgrading? Because when I look at I don't care about the touch bar. I think it's a neat feature, but a lot of people don't like it because they don't have dedicated keys that are there all the time. As an example, the touch bar, which is basically a miniature screen, right?
Yeah.
You only get like options to raise and lower the volume when the computer thinks you need that option. So they're not there all the time. And
Mm.
that bugs a lot of people. I kind of wish Apple had left the original function keys where they were at and just crammed the touch bar a little farther up so you'd have had the best of both worlds if you wanted.
Hi,
But
Greg.
Robert had one of these, and I want to see how he's doing with it. So yeah.
Hi, everybody. Hey, Greg.
Hey, you
You're
look
talking
pretty
about the
good, man.
meeting?
You look pretty good, Bruce. How you been? How you doing?
Pretty good. Uh, Despite the fact that I have shingles, which on top of everything else is,
I've had that before. Lovely. I got it in my face, and I got it on my face and neck when I got it.
yeah, I've got a band that goes around my torso from front to back, and it's going away. Thankfully, they caught it early, got me on an antiviral medicine, and it seems to have helped. So,
I
and
don't know
it's
whether you guys know or not, but a month back or so. Sorry to Bruce to interrupt you, but okay, John's calling me.
okay.
Hang on.
John
Yeah,
Foley.
John.
Hey,
I just sent a
your
link.
meeting should start in a few seconds,
Pardon?
and it doesn't.
I just sent a link again. So click on that one.
Oh, you sent a new link?
It's the same. It's the same one, but I don't know what's going on with Zoom. But I just sent an email out to the whole gang, a real short email with the link in there. And click on that. That should solve the problem.
Let me see if I can get it here. Oh, there it is. Okay, Zoom meeting link. Okay, let's try this again. Do you want to allow this page? Your meeting should start in a few seconds, it says. That's all it says. Are they having trouble getting on today?
Yep, everybody is, and I don't know what's going on.
Oh, okay, all right. Then it says, then click here to join the meeting.
Go ahead,
click here to join the meeting.
Yeah.
It says, do you want to allow the page to open Zoom June U.S.
Yes, you always wanted. Yes,
So I say allow.
yeah, you do. You do.
And then it comes up with join a meeting. Oh, there it is now. Well, it did work now. All right.
All right.
I'll be on.
Well, at least we're starting to get a few bodies here, but apparently this is a nationwide problem that we're facing, and I wish I knew what's causing it. Hi, Susan. How you doing? I don't know whether everybody knew or not, but John Foley had, or not John Foley, but Steve Spiegel was visiting friends or relatives or whatever it was up in the Seattle area a month or two back, and ended up going to the hospital, and they ended up doing an angioplasty on him, or angiogram on him.
Hmm.
He's doing okay right now, but the cardiologist, when I talked to him yesterday, he was they've got him on a strict regimen for trying to get his strength back up and all that stuff. So hopefully Steve will be joining us sometime this morning. So, but he seems to be doing okay. So I'm sorry, Bruce. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Bruce. And
That's okay.
I sidetracked.
I'm doing pretty good, all things considered. I mean, about as good as you can be. So I can't complain. And the rash has gone away, or all but gone away, thanks, I guess, to the antiviral med. And the itching seems to be getting better, although it's still pretty bad in certain areas. But anyway, my question for you, Greg, you seem to be talking about the new MacBook Pros and MacBooks with the trackpad.
With the touch
bar. The
touch bar.
Touch bar. One of the things, I don't have one, but one of the things I wondered about is I noticed that on the new ones, at least, the escape key is no longer a hardware key. It's now on that programmable row of keys.
Right, which means it's not always there when you need it.
Right, and I don't know about other people, but I use the escape key to cancel out of dialog boxes all the time. So I just wonder how that works, and there's no tactile feedback, or not as much feedback as there would be with a hardware keyboard, at least. So, has anybody have any experience with that?
Well, I was watching Mac Break, and I haven't tried this, but no, it's probably not the same. I was watching Mac Break here earlier this week, and they were talking about on the iPhone 10, since there's no home button, if it gets hung up, you don't have a home button to hit to reset.
That's right. There's no hardware button there anymore.
No. And Rene Ritchie from imore.com says, well, here's what you can do. You can, if you've got Hey Siri enabled on the phone to where you can just talk to it anytime, you can just say, Hey Siri, and then tell Siri to open up an application like Mail or something like that. And that'll solve the problem. That'll unfreeze the system almost every time. If you don't have the Hey Siri feature, apparently you can hold the power button in and say Hey Siri, and it'll do it'll turn it on for that session. I just activated it on my iPad here.
Well, and that's so good.
There's probably something like that available for the new Macs, some weird keyboard combination or whatever it is. That probably what we need to do is go into Google and do a search. How do you get access? How do you do an escape when there's no escape key with the Touch Bar Mac?
Yeah, what would be nice is if there was a key sequence that would allow you to bring back a basic function row of keys, including the escape key, and then you could hit it. At least to do it, it'd be one extra key press, but at least there'd be a way to do it then.
Yeah, I would think there'd be some combination using the delete, like Command Option Delete, something weird like that, or
something
whatever.
like three key sequence or something.
So I'm kind of hoping that Robert Amidite joins us, because he's had one here for about 6-8 months, and we'd be able to pick his brain on it.
Yes.
But right now I don't see enough of a hardware improvement, speed-wise or capability-wise, other than the Touch Bar, to make it worthwhile to spend. Because I would buy it pretty much fully loaded. So I'd be spending between $3,000 and $4,000. I don't see any cost-effective reason to do that right now.
I think I told you the club here in Washington dropped about $3,000 on a new MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, just so they could live stream their meetings on the internet. That was.
How's it working for them?
Well, it's working. It's working better than it was with the old MacBook Pro we were using, which was a lot older and slower processor and everything. I didn't make their meeting they had a meeting today and I didn't go. But I did try to watch the streaming video. The first time I had the opportunity to do that, it was working. There were some glitches. I think that some of the glitches were when Dante, that's the guy that runs the cameras, when he switches from one camera to another, they think it might have caused some glitches out on the live stream there, but I don't know if that's true. It's a possibility, I guess. But mostly it worked, but there were times when I had to reload the web page in order, to get it to work. They're streaming on YouTube via YouTube, so, and that generally should work pretty good. And they've got all late model equipment now, hardware and software to do it, at least it seems. So, if it could be done, it ought to be possible now.
Right. I would find it real hard to believe they don't have a fallback position on that one. Some weird keyboard combination or something like that.
Yeah, for the escape key and some of the other ones.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. That's a good Robert question, huh?
Or maybe there's a keyboard combination to force the touch bar to come up with the default function keys all the time.
Right, some standard set of things, which hopefully would include the escape key on the left or something. But
because I thought the idea of the touch bar, when I first read about it, I thought, gee, that's a great idea. I mean, you can custom, it's like
it's like having a bigger keyboard.
Yeah, it is. But when you take away functionality that people are used to getting and they don't have access to it all the time,
right? So there's a little bit of a learning curve there, or undoing of some of those motor reflexes that we're used to, like hitting the escape with your left pinky or something. That's going to be a change for me if I ever get one of those things.
Yep.
Bruce,
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, DeBart.
Yeah, Bruce, I'm sort of curious. Are they using Zoom also?
No, we're doing video conferencing, which is multiple people, two-way with audio and video. All they're doing is web broadcasting. They're webcasting, they're live streaming, so their video and audio goes out to the web, but nobody who's watching sends any video or audio back to them. In fact, you can comment. The only way you can do it, there's a text chat feature, and you can use the chat feature. I think you have to log into your YouTube account to use it, but once you do that, you can type, short text type messages to them, and the person who's running the MacBook Pro with the live streaming hopefully will, answer or see those messages. So, for example, during their Q&A, which was at 9:30 to 10:30 or 9:30 to 10 this morning East Coast time, if you had a Q&A question, you could put it in the form of a text message in that chat and send it to them, and hopefully somebody at the meeting would, read it aloud, and the guy who was doing the Q&A would try to answer it. But although we didn't have any like that today, so far as I could see. So,
Greg, are you on an iPad?
Me? No, I'm on
no. Greg Locke.
I'm on an iMac.
No, I mean the reason it's not filling the whole screen.
Right.
When I turn on the whole screen, you see the junk behind me.
Oh, okay.
My wife made me do this. This is some point in time I'll set up lights maybe and put do a true green screen or whatever. But when I try to do the green screen right now with the crappy lighting I have in here,
you see this Maryland banner thing here? It's not sort of like the flag of Maryland with some other stuff,
Right.
That's actually doing the same thing as hiding some glitter.
This is a big, believe it or not, this is a cardboard voting booth behind me that I've got a piece of green cloth draped over because she was so bugged about people seeing the junk behind me on the kitchen table and in the kitchen that she said, well, you're not going to do it in that room. You'll have to go to another room. And I said, I'm not going to pick this thing up and move it every time I want to do something like this. So I came up with this idea. So it's a stopgap for right now. Eventually I'll have it figured out. But
yeah, so all you can see behind me now is bookshelves with books on them. Which, if you know,
if I go to HD,
if you ever watch TV when they have analysts or people like that
walking behind
specialists, oftentimes they'll show them in a setting where there's books behind them. you know,
Right.
supposed to make you look smarter or
Fake.
something.
It's fake. Yeah, right. Well, there's the Zoom people give you a whole bunch of those, but I haven't got my background lighting set up right. But if I go to HD mode, I lose the black stripes to the side, and the background's not is too far behind me, so you start to see junk. So I thought, well, hell with it, who cares? I'll go with a narrower background. I'll try to fix that in the next time or whatever.
John, were you asking whether I was on an iPad or
No. I was asking Greg.
Because
Okay.
because I'm not filling the entire frame.
Right. But every time you talk, it opens up to a full frame.
Yeah, I tried to get in. I tried to get in from my.
It does. Yours does.
It does really.
Yeah.
That's
See?
interesting.
Can you see it?
No, it looks the same to me no matter what.
Oh, okay. No, you can see the black stripes on either side of it.
Yeah, now you're filling the frame. It's yellow all the way around.
Yeah.
It's like you zoomed in a little bit or something.
Now you can see the cloth behind you.
Oh yeah, now you
Right.
Who cares? That's good enough.
pay
That's
no
all right.
attention to the man behind the screen.
That's right.
I am Oz.
Greg?
Yes.
Yes, Ron. Some more recent news on my Mac Mini that would not.
We're in Mac Mini.
Yeah. Now, after I spoke with you and you said, call Robert, he didn't answer. So I then went back and I was shocked that the screen was up. It had gone all the way to display. This gave me the opportunity to get rid of several hundred screenshots, put them in folders, and get rid of all of my open tabs. The amount of memory. I thought, all right, that's going to solve the problem. I reattached my time machine and let it run, and it took a long, long time to like 2-3 hours instead of 5 minutes. I thought, okay, so I'm fine. I pulled that off. I turned it off and tried restarting it. Guess what? Same problem as before. It wouldn't restart in any way I tried, either from the exterior hard disk or interior, internal. So I am concluding that the hard disk is okay, but there's something in the hardware that won't let it go more than 2/3 or from external. It does go just to expect the display to pop up and doesn't do that. So there's something with the hardware. Maybe I can then take it down to Steve. But meanwhile, is there any reason why, if the hard disk is working, why I can't use it in target mode?
No, you have to have it. You have to have enough smarts in the computer to be able to turn it into target mode. So try it. Reboot it again, and hold down the T key while it's booting up to force it into target mode. You should get an icon flashing on the screen that shows like the SCSI, not SCSI, but shows like the FireWire logo or something like that.
FireWire or Thunderbolt or whatever the interface is.
Right.
If the drive itself is working and the interface cable and all of that is working, and
you got enough smarts in the computer to get to that stage.
And certain critical parts of the computer are working, you should be able to do it. I think even if the display failed, you'd still be able to get
that'll still work.
Mode. You just wouldn't be able to see it on the screen.
Yeah, the problem he was having, Bruce, is he had come back from vacation, fired up all the computers. They got a couple of iMacs, I guess, upstairs, and he's got a Mac Mini downstairs at his place. And the Mac Mini would boot up and get about 3/4 of the way through and just halt.
Mm.
And so Steve wasn't able to help him out. And so we tried 3 or 4 different things. We were able to get it to boot up into recovery mode. So that was working. And we ran disk utility, and it didn't generate any errors. It was slow, but it didn't generate any errors. Ran that a couple of times.
If it booted up into recovery mode, that rules out almost all of the hardware, the basic hardware.
Except that you don't recovery mode. You don't.
Normally.
He was getting a Bluetooth error in normal boot up, and so recovery mode doesn't activate Bluetooth.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, it does. What am I saying? It does.
Well, it has to
So-
for the keyboard, I think, and the mouse sometimes.
Well, but he had to go, at one point in time, he had to go get a wired keyboard and mouse because the Bluetooth one stopped working. So,
yeah.
but it worked in recovery mode, and then we were able to go ahead and get onto the internet and try to load an operating system from Apple to see if we could just overwrite the existing operating system. It got about 3/4 of the way through and halted, you know, after 4 or 5 hours or whatever it's trying to download. So I said, but the only other suggestion I could think would be to, we tried putting an operating system on a flash drive. That idea didn't work. So eventually he brought another drive from upstairs that had a working copy of El Capitan, and it attempted to, it did boot to that, right, Ron?
No.
Oh, it didn't.
It started up, and the booting process, a little thermometer went all the way to the end, and then it stopped. No display.
Did you try that? Did you test that boot drive on another known good Mac to verify? That's what I would do right then and there, is take that El Capitan drive and make sure it'll boot some other Mac to make sure that the drive and the software are okay, even if you think they're okay.
It's
And
fine. I reattached it to her old iBook, and it worked fine. So that's not a problem. It's this something with this Mini. So my question is, okay, what I can do then, if it's a good idea, and I thought about it, I didn't want to open it up if the idea wouldn't work, but I have a Thunderbolt cable.
Uh-oh, somebody fell over.
And then after that, I can take any files that I want, put them onto a large flash drive, and then commit the Mini to whoever is going to try to fix it, either Steve or I'd rather not go to the Genius Bar because they'll charge an arm and a leg.
The other thing is you have to be careful if all your Macs are not the same vintage or the same model. Not all versions of OS X will boot all hardware versions of Macintoshes either. So, you know, even if a given operating system will boot one Mac, it might not boot another Mac just because the Mac is too old or too new, or the operating system is too old or too new, or whatever, you know. So you have to be careful. But if they're all pretty close, you know, it should work. If the vintage or the age of the hardware and software is all about the same, you're probably okay. But if not, you need to look into that a little bit, you know. You can use, you know, the program Mac Tracker. Have you got Mac Tracker on your Mac? If you have Mac Tracker, you can use that to see what versions of OS X will work on a given Mac. So you look up your Mac hardware model, like the one you're having problems with, and you'll have to do this on another Mac, of course. So you look up the Mac you're having problems with and see what versions of OS X is capable of running, and make sure any drive that you're trying to boot it from has a version of OS X that's within that range of OS X versions. And then you should be okay. And then if it won't boot well, then it must be something else, I guess.
Well, somewhere along about 2007, they switched to 64-bit operating systems instead of 32-bit.
Yeah.
So you got to have pretty old computer that newer operating systems won't run on now.
That's right.
All are 64-bit.
Mm-hmm.
He says all of his are 64.
Oh, yeah. Right. So how do you get a copy of OS X on a flash drive that'll boot off of boot up?
Well, it's a little tricky. But first of all, you have to have a big enough flash drive. That's not as much of a problem as it used to be because they keep getting bigger.
Yeah.
Greater capacity, storage capacity. But yeah, I think you have to, well, first of all, it has to be formatted for one of the Mac operating system drive formats. You can't use, the way they come from the factory, it's usually FAT32 or something like that. You can't boot a Mac from a FAT32 drive.
Right. You got to reformat it with
Yeah, so the first thing you have to
utility.
do is reformat, but you also need to, I think, run disk utility and partition it, even if you're not intending to change the partition size, and even if you're not intending to change the number of partitions. The reason for that is to make sure that it writes out the right type of partition table, because the Windows partition table that's probably on that drive is not the right one for booting a Mac.
Well, the only way I've ever been able to do it is on a hard drive.
I'm sorry.
You have to, I used whatever that copy thing is we always use.
Carbon copy cloner or Super Duper, one or the other.
Right, copy cloner.
You do have to have a Mac that can boot to a USB. So older Macs can't boot to USB. So it'll only work on maybe the last 4 or 5, maybe last 7 or 8 years worth of Mac.
Yeah, right. And I don't know what the cutoff is, but it's been quite a while now. They've all been able to boot from USB drives, provided the drive is set up correctly.
Right, but a USB drive, most of them won't take a whole operating system on it. Now, how do you get it?
Well, it has to be 8 gig or more. It has to be, because usually the operating system is around 5.5 gig.
Yeah.
So you need
is
to put
that
it on
installed,
an 8 gig.
or is that just on the installation?
Installed, it's about 5 gig.
Okay, all right.
So you need to basically you need an 8 gig flash drive.
Yeah. So the first thing you have to do is go to a working Mac, launch disk utility, stick the flash drive in, and repartition.
Format HFS.
Repartition it as what is it? APM is the old one, right?
No.
That's the new one.
AFS is the new one, and you don't want to do that because that.
No, I'm not talking about the format. I'm talking about the partition table. That's different. You know, there's 3 types. MBR, Master Boot Record. That's Windows.
Right.
And then what are the other 2 that Apple uses? Anyway.
Well, there's HFS and HFS Plus journal.
No, those are formats, not partition.
Right. Well, I can't tell you without going into disk utility and trying it. So
GTP. Right. That's the other part. That's what you.
I think it's
GTP.
GPM or something like that.
No, GTP.
GPT, yeah. GUID partition table. GPT, and that's the one you want. The other one, APM, is the old Apple format, and you don't really want that either for most Macs.
And you definitely don't want the new one, because you can't use the new format on an older operating system.
Yes, that's right. And the old format will work on some newer Macs too, but I don't know if it works all the way up to the present day. I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't know.
I think they've dropped.
I think because they only forced that change with High Sierra.
Right.
Okay, so that's the first thing you do is you partition it with GPT and Mac OS Extended or HFS Plus on one and only one partition, or it really doesn't matter how many partitions, as long as you make it a big one, big enough. It's better if it's only one, because then when it goes to boot, it can't accidentally try to boot from one of the wrong ones. So once it's formatted and partitioned, then you can install an operating system, a version of OS 10 on it.
How much newspaper are you doing with on?
What's the, let's see, what was the one he talked about, El Capitan or something? That would work fine for most Macs, I think, over a wide range of years. So if you have an installer stashed away somewhere, if you have an installer for El Capitan or one of the OS 10 versions that will run on that Mac, then you run the installer, and there's a point when you start it where it will ask you where you want to put it, and normally you just skip over that because it's always going to pick the internal drive, and that's what you want 90% of the time. But in this case, you have to stop and carefully choose the USB flash drive, which hopefully is plugged in by this time. And then once you do that, the installer will put a copy of OS 10 on that flash drive. I think at that point, when it's done, if it finishes successfully, I think it should be bootable. There might be another step. I don't think so, though. I think that's all you have to do. Once you've done that, that drive should boot any Mac for over a wide number of years, and you could test it once again, by trying to boot one of your other Macs that's known good and working before you try it on the bad Mac, the one with the problem. So, you know, it's a little bit of work to try that. But on the other hand, if you have an extra flash drive, having an extra copy of OS 10 on a flash drive is a handy thing to have for troubleshooting anyway. So you might just want to do that and hang on to the drive anyway. Well, I hope that helps some.
And the boot up process, no matter which way it happened, was extremely slow.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hello.
Finally got on, I see.
At last, yeah.
Was John Foley trying to talk or somebody else?
I don't know. Everybody, I'm going to mute everybody and then manually unmute
Okay.
when you need
Okay.
to. Damn. That's what I get for hitting the wrong button. Okay, so I've muted everybody, and when you want to talk, unmute yourself. That way we don't hear all the background noise.
I've got a quick question. Early in your discussion there, you mentioned target mode. What is that?
On the Macs, starting with the models, when FireWire first came out, they came up with a feature where you could boot one, if you wanted to transfer files from one Mac to another Mac, the older Mac, if you want to think of it that way, you could boot it up and hold down the T for target. And that booted up, that gave just enough smarts to turn that Mac and that drive combination into basically a disk drive. And with a FireWire cable plugged to the other Mac, that would actually mount it up on the desktop, and you could then manually drag files off, do whatever you wanted back and forth. So it turned one Mac into a slave and the other one into a master, if you want to think of it that way. And to the best of my knowledge, that still exists, and it works just about across it works across USB, it works across Flash, it'll work just about across anything, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right, Bruce?
Yes, that's correct. It actually started, Greg. It actually started before FireWire.
I think it was SCSI.
Yeah, originally there was SCSI target disk mode, and every single time they changed the fastest interface, Apple has nicely added this feature into the newer Macs so that whatever your fastest interface is on that Mac, whether it's FireWire 400, FireWire 800, what's the newer Thunderbolt 1, 2, or 3, which is the latest one, it will all those Macs, regardless of what their fastest interface is, will boot into target disk mode with that fastest interface. So there's no choosing the interface. You have to know which one it is, and you have to have the right cables and adapters. But once you do that, if you put that Mac into target mode, it dumbs it down, basically. Think of it as changing a computer into an external hard drive with a FireWire or Thunderbolt cable. And then you connect that interface cable to another normal Mac that's booted up, and you can use that other Mac that's booted in target mode as just another hard drive, which, like Greg said, means you could drag files to and from it. You can do a lot of things. And you could even run a program like Carbon Copy Cloner or Super Duper and clone something onto that drive. Although it depends on what you're doing. If you're not careful, you can end up with a Mac that used to boot not being bootable anymore. So but you can do all those things. It basically turns it into a hard drive. And I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but I think, or John Foley, but if you have a Mac with a bootable operating system and you put it into target mode and connect it to another Mac, I think you can boot that second Mac from that target mode drive.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm pretty sure you're right. I think
Again, that all
I think
depends on,
any viable operating system
right.
that it can see should work.
It all hinges on there being an operating system that's compatible with both Macs.
Right.
Of course. You know, over a wide range of versions of OS 10 and hardware Mac versions, they are compatible. But, you know, if you go too far in either direction, old or new, then you might run into a problem.
Right, you'll find nowadays if you buy one of the latest Macs, it'll probably only use the current operating system and maybe the version before that. They don't keep that compatible. Whereas one that's this Mac is 5 years old and I'm good for about 5-6 operating systems back. Prior to that, I can't. But it's kind of weird the way Apple does that. And there's probably a hack to get around that because I'm sure they don't internally change that structure. They probably have it looking at like the code, you know, wherever they call that particular model in their coding or whatever, and say, okay, start from this point on. Who knows? I'm sure that's in their infinite wisdom to make life easier for the rest of us. That's their logic behind it.
Hello, Steve and Spiegel. How are you doing? Good to see you.
You're muted at the moment, Steve. You're muted.
Tell him to unmute himself.
Steve, unmute yourself. Okay, I'll do it. Hang on.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
Okay, so where I'm at is outside the Apple store, but I'm not using their Wi-Fi in Fashion Island. My wife was meeting someone, and then she was going to get her hair done down in Newport. So I says, well, why don't I take you to lunch afterwards? And so I brought my iPad and my iPhone with me and my bottle of water. And now, Greg, on the subject you were talking about, there is hacks. And my son, Mark, he has a Mac Pro, an older Mac Pro, which will not handle any of the newer things past
Mavericks, probably.
Lion or something, or
right.
Snow Leopard, I mean. And so what happens is he has been taking on his own, and he's figuring these things out, and he has got it almost up to current, but he doesn't want to go to current because he doesn't want to screw things up, and that's his only computer right now.
Right.
But and what happened to me was I got a hold of a 27-inch iMac and transferred my stuff from my Mac Pro, and then I had a problem with my mail, and so I've got 70,000 emails to go through and try and catch up, because the numbers, what happened, how it blew up was it went from being all nicely organized to folders when I did a recovery where the date on the file doesn't match the date of the email. So I'm really struggling. But anyway, so there is a way to do it if you're willing to take the chance, you know. How do I get, can you tell me, Greg, how do I get, I was looking for how to get the all of the people.
Gallery view?
Yeah, how do I get that? Oh, here. Wait a second. Start. Yeah.
It toggles between speaker view and gallery view.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm here, guys. Sorry, a little late, but and hi, Ron. I see you down there.
Hi, Steve.
Well, he's
And
back
so
in his cave.
we'll talk. We'll talk later in the day as soon as we have some time. So
Steve,
anyway,
coming.
What's that?
How's this recovery coming, Steve?
Well, I attended 15 cardiac rehab deals, which is basically exercising, kind of forced exercising. They give you how many times you got to do it, or how many minutes, how much, what level and stuff. And I've been doing that. I did one yesterday. And then my son dropped me off in the morning because I had to pull the battery wire on my car because it was alarming on Thursday night. And it's like, we got a quiet cul-de-sac. I didn't want to disturb the neighbors. And so I didn't have a car. So he drove me over to the place by Mission Hospital where I go. And then he came to pick me up, but it was already 12:35, almost 12:40. And he has to go work at the other store and at 1. And I said, you're not going to be able to get me home at time. First time since I was 12, probably, that I took a bus and I walked, and it it brings back such memories. So anyway, and then my wife's birthday is the 21st next week, and guess where she's taking me for her birthday? Get an angiogram at the hospital. I said,
better to go while you're still breathing than not when you're not breathing. So.
Yeah, that's it. It's like, who was it? Oh, Robert. He said to me in a comment, he says, at least I'm above the grass and not below it.
Yeah, my famous saying is, if I wake up in the morning and there's not dirt in my mouth, I know it'll be a good day.
Oh, levity. So what do we got? We got 12 people?
16.
Oh, 16. Now, how do I go see the rest of them? Just slide it?
Yeah, it slides, I think, on the iPad. I'm not sure.
Let's see here. Oh, yeah, there's William Defray and Don. Yeah, okay, I got them all. Oh, there's Bonnie. Bonnie, I got your calls, and I was in the minute of having breakfast here in Newport, and so I couldn't, but I figured if you get on, I'll talk to you, or I'll talk to you after the meeting. Okay, I'll shut up now until anybody has something that I can put in.
Well, I'll give you another couple of minutes or whatever before I start the presentation on Flexical.
Okay, well,
they've updated go ahead.
I have a question, Steve.
Yeah.
I already asked Greg. Don't tell him what your answer was, Greg, but I'm trying to get some independent thought on this. Is Sierra stable enough now that I should consider upgrading, or should I continue to hold off? I mean, the High Sierra, or should I hold?
Oh, High Sierra, I usually wait, and then you check with the people that you deal with, or the sites like, the Mac special sites.
MacMost, iMore.
Yeah, all those things. And the other thing you could do is Google stability of
Google High Sierra stability. That'll work.
Yeah. And what the main thing is I always tell people, take and make a question out of what you want to find, and try and keep it as short as possible, because that way you'll get a better deal. If you dig down with 5 levels of words, it's got to sort more, and so try and just condense it, and you'll find what you want. I mean, I had a deal where my alarm was going off on the car, and I went inside, and actually I had my phone out, and I Googled, alarm going off kind of thing, and there was all sorts of not Facebook, YouTube videos telling you why it is, what to do to correct it. So finally, after I called the dealer here, it was like 7 o'clock or something in Newport, and I asked the guy, and the guy got on the phone couldn't give me a straight answer. So I said, to hell with it. I got to get this thing quiet, because, our cul-de-sac is very quiet. So I just basically took the other guy's advice, and he said, just unscrew the negative cable and stick it under the battery there to hold it. And then I came yesterday when I got out of the rehab and got home, and I took my car to a private shop that's just down the hill from me, and it was a what's called a siren module, which is down, buried under the wheel well, behind a plate, all that stuff. And even if I could get it cheaper online, I'd still have to wait for it to get there. And I can't drive my car if I can't have the negative.